My name is Janine Provenzano, and I have the honor of reading to you my book that was just published. It's called Mary's Chair, inspired by the real life of Mary Fashik, who is actually my friend in real life. I wrote this story about her. Here we go. Mary's Chair. Mary was born in the middle of August. She arrived with the sun at the break of day, while birds feasted on sunflower seeds and bees danced around the dewy lavender which dotted the hillside. Clouds sat motionless in the marble blue sky. Mary cried and fussed on occasion, and it was a good day. As the hours and days and weeks ran together, Mary's mother tended to her baby's every need in what seemed to be an endless cycle of naps, feedings, diapers, bath time, and snuggles. Mary's journey into babyhood had begun. During this particular time, in the land where Mary was born, a civil war was tearing up the country with no end in sight. Barbara knew that this was not a safe situation, especially for her daughter. After much thought and debate, Barbara packed Mary's clothes, favorite toys, and books. On a bright October day, as the sun dangled at the top of the sky, the farmer down the road pulled up in a creaky, horse-drawn wagon. Barbara swaddled Mary in a soft pink blanket, climbed up into the wagon, and they began down a dusty path for a place miles away from home. Each clip-clop of the horse's hooves was one more moment closer to letting Mary go. As Barbara reclined in the wagon, she cradled the baby tightly to her bosom and sang her songs for the entire ride. Just as the sun sank beneath the horizon and the moon began to beam a smile from the heavens, they arrived at Mary's new home. Barbara tiptoed up 3 shallow steps onto the porch with Mary clutched in her arms. She looked down at the baby with a blank stare as she extended her arm and quickly rapped on the door. Barbara stood there, aglow in the moonlight, for what seemed to be an eternity. Straight away the door creaked open, and on the other side a rather tall woman with soft, rosy cheeks and twinkling hazel eyes smiled back at Barbara and Mary. "Please come in. We have been anxiously awaiting your arrival," a jovial voice proclaimed. Sister Antoinette gingerly reached out to take the baby. Barbara gasped, then kissed Mary tenderly on the forehead. With a steady stream of tears that dripped from her cheeks, Barbara handed the baby over. As painful as it was to give up her daughter, she knew that this was Mary's second chance at life. The sisters took turns tending to the baby day and night, and Mary thrived under their benevolent care. But it was Sister Antoinette who cared for Mary as if she were her own. Peekaboo, sitting up, new foods, story time, and strolls in the garden were usually the order of the day, and to let them know when she was happy, which was most of the time, Mary would giggle, sing, or wave her arms. Mary loved the sisters, and the sisters loved Mary. Then, one Sunday, after many months of paperwork and planning, a lady flew across the globe in the hopes of making Mary a part of her family. "I wish you could see her. She is perfect," exclaimed Delilah to her husband over the phone. "A few more days and stamps in our passports, and soon we will be home." And just like that, Mary said goodbye to her gentle guardians. As Sister Antoinette looked Mary in the face, she gently brushed the baby's cheek with her hand and said this prayer: "Good luck to you, sweet baby girl. I wish you every grace. May angels guide you on your journey to a better place." A small white car rolled up to the front of the convent where Barbara brought Mary so many months ago. The driver tossed their bags into the trunk, and with that, Delilah and Mary set off on their journey across the world. Snug in her jammies, Mary lay asleep on the plane, tucked safely in a carrier. Thousands of miles and many oceans later, Mary and Delilah arrived in Miami. The air smelled of salt and damp earth. Wispy palm tree fronds swayed gently in the breeze, as if to wave hello to their newest neighbor. After a few days on a beautiful July afternoon, neighbors, friends, and family all gathered to greet the newest addition. A giant pink and white cake read, "Welcome home, Mary," and was the centerpiece of a bountiful banquet to honor her arrival. Sam, her adoptive father, and Delilah stood Mary up on the table behind the cake, each holding her hand. Everyone clapped. Mary was home. After many days of laughter and play, Delilah noticed when Mary tried to crawl that she would push off with one side of her body and drag the other side along. Even more noticeably, when Mary attempted to walk, she would never take more than one wobbly step, and invariably she would fall. She always seemed to fall. Delilah tried to help the determined Mary take continuous steps, but weeks of trying led to no success. So, like any good parent, Delilah took Mary to a physician to figure out why the baby was unable to reach this very important milestone. 5 visits later and many tests and x-rays, the doctor declared that Mary had cerebral palsy. Often called CP, cerebral palsy is a group of disorders that affect the way a person controls his or her muscles, sometimes caused by injury to a baby's developing brain. No 2 cases are the same. Upon hearing this news, with sadness in her heart, Delilah gazed at her daughter and said, "Now we must figure out how to live with this. You can't stop trying now. You surely must persist." Leg braces would steady her gait. A walker would allow Mary to keep her muscles nimble and strong. But the main piece of hardware that would keep her moving as fast as she was smart was an electric wheelchair. This became Mary's new normal. Preschool days brought fun and games, healthy snacks, and laughter. Bubbles and sidewalk chalk were an everyday ritual, but the best days were those spent in the kiddie pool under the shade of the fan palms. Boats, duckies, and stacking cups were always the toys of choice. Even so, the most entertaining water activity was the occasional splash fight. Despite their differences, the children were one and the same. They did not judge or notice or mind. They were little, and the world was full of wonder. They knew that they were friends, and they loved one another. Then, just like that, elementary school came rolling around. Scary though it was, with its big hallways and countless kids of all ages and sizes. Mary walked right in, her head held high, and she decided to conquer her new world. Mary sailed through the first 3 years of school. She sometimes used a walker to get to class, but most of the time she relied on her wheelchair. Most kids did not notice, or did not mind, that their classmate was different in this way. Then came the 3rd grade. Mary's schedule showed all of her classes were in the same room on the 1st floor. A bit puzzled, she found her room and took a seat. Before long, Mary became bored with the lessons, staring out the window or sometimes nearly falling asleep. After a week had passed, Mary decided to speak with the principal. In the hallway, Mary caught up with the principal and politely explained, "I'm not trying to be rude or fresh. I mean no one else any disrespect. I know that I'm capable of more. I just can't climb the stairs to my classes on the 2nd floor." Principal Clark started to look around and realized there was no elevator, only stairs that went up and down between the floors. "Have a good weekend. I'll figure it out. Come Monday, you won't feel a bit left out," proclaimed Principal Clark as she scurried down the hallway to her office. On Monday, Mary went to her usual classroom. The teacher gave Mary a separate stack of papers because from now on, Mary's assignments would be sent down to her from the classes she would have taken had she been able to get up the stairs. After a few days, Mary once again approached the principal. "Don't get me wrong. I appreciate that my work's being brought to me every day," Mary exclaimed. "But it would be much more fun to actually join my classmates and share what I have to say." Another light bulb popped into Principal Clark's brain. "Please, Mary, don't fret," she said. "I'm not done just yet." And with that, she bolted back to her office. The following Monday, all the kids in the school received new schedules and classroom locations. It was like the first day of school all over again, especially for Mary. This time, she discovered that all the third grade classes, which were inaccessible on the second floor, had moved to the first floor. Principal Clark rearranged the entire school. The inclusion that Mary should have received in the first place was finally a reality. Principal Clark saw Mary in the hallway as the students changed classes. "Next year to come, elevators, my dear," Principal Clark declared. Mary's achievements were many and varied for such a young girl. She and a friend named Rachel won third place in the school talent show for a duet they sang together. Mary earned first place in the school-wide math tournament. Honor roll became a familiar occurrence because of her excellent grades. Not to mention, she loved going on scouting adventures with her troop, especially camping and bowling. And when she was not involved with school activities, Mary loved to go shopping at the mall with a group of her friends. She enjoyed playing pinball at the arcade and getting her favorite double chocolate swirl ice cream at the ice cream parlor. Mary was kind to animals, especially to her dog Sheba. A favorite pastime was reading in the quiet of her room. But even more so, Mary was fond of cranking up the radio. Mary may have moved around in a wheelchair and sometimes with the aid of a walker, but that did not mean she was any different on the inside. She had thoughts and feelings, wishes and dreams, just like everyone else. Got the page. Everything was terrific until the day it was not. One fine Tuesday, a small clique of girls led by a troublemaker named Amber caught up with Mary in the hall. They cornered her and stared Mary straight in the face. "Who do you think you are?" Amber sneered. "Your legs can barely work. Your hand is bent, your fingers curl. You always slur when you talk. You think you're so cool. You think you're so smart, all because you got some dumb awards. But you're not cool. You'll never be. You're not like the rest of the girls." Speechless, Mary's jaw opened in complete shock and her eyes began to swell. Her stomach began to churn. As she stared back at Amber, Mary quietly began to sob. The chatter that had swirled around the corridor came to a hush. The kids started to stare. Suddenly, a deep, raspy voice rang out from behind a half-open locker door. "Just who in the world do you think you are? Judging Mary like that, it takes a miserable human to act like such a brat. Mary is smart, funny, and kind, everything you are not. Get out of here, you jealous fool. Quit acting like such a snot." As he retorted back, the boy put his arm around Mary and stood next to her, tall like a soldier. He gave a stone-faced glare to Amber and her gaggle of girls. Defeated, the girls returned his glare with nasty looks as they skulked away to their next class. Then the boy turned to Mary and said, "I've seen you around the halls and been meaning to say hi. My name is Angel. Pleased to meet you. Don't let them make you cry." "So what? Your legs don't move you around like other people's do. That doesn't make you less of a human. It just makes you, well, you." Mary wiped her salty tears with a tissue that she pulled from the side pocket of her backpack. She took a deep breath and flashed a smile of gratitude at her new friend. A sense of relief washed over her now that those atrocious girls were out of her face. But more importantly, Mary realized that she made a true friend in Angel that day. Angel saw Mary for who she was on the inside. He saw past her wheelchair, past her braced legs, and past her bent left hand. He saw Mary for Mary. So you see, this Mary was not contrary, nor did she have a little lamb. This Mary was an extraordinary girl who just happened to use a wheelchair. It moved her body from place to place, but was not her heart or soul. It was merely a means of movement that helped her achieve a goal. It did not mean she was weird, helpless, lame, or dumb. She was just unable to move her legs and get around like some. So next time you see another human traveling along in a wheelchair, please do not judge their worth on the surface. That is flagrantly unfair. We all have things we can and cannot do, no matter how we look. What counts is what lies in the depths of our hearts and choosing a positive outlook. Angel chose to focus on Mary's strengths, that she was different like everyone else. People should always give to others the same respect that they would expect for themselves. The end.